Good afternoon and welcome to SSN Leadership Talks. We're in season 2 and this is episode 12. This is a 20-minute Q&A every Thursday at 12:30 Eastern Time with an industry leader, and today's leader is Andrew Lanning, CEO of Integrated Security Technologies based in Hawaii. So for Andrew, it's 6:30 in the morning. Welcome, Andrew.
Aloha, Tim. Thanks for having me. Aloha, everybody.
So before we start, as you probably have seen in the news, we're getting hit with our 4th nor'easter here in New England. What happens to be the weather in Hawaii right now?
Oh, it's probably 68 and gonna be a sunny day. Sorry. we get about 350 of those a year, so I think you're on your 4 Easter I saw in the news.
I feel sorry for you. All right, so if you've looked at any of our sessions on YouTube, the program's called Leadership Talks. So my first question is, what is your leadership style?
Well, my leadership style, I co-founded my company with my wife 20 years ago. And my leadership style is to listen to whatever she tells me to do and make sure I do it fairly rapidly. To be honest with you, I'm Navy trained, did 8.5 years in the Navy, and my style of leadership is much more commanding. If you know about DISC assessments, I'm a D, and that style of leadership of, if I want your opinion, I'll tell you what it is, really doesn't resonate with anyone anymore. So I became outdated, and Christine actually has a much more collaborative leadership style. Which we allow her to lead with, and I have learned to take direction better, ask more questions. We use a management practice derived from the Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, which is called Traction. It's a book by Gino Wickman, and it is really is a way to operationalize leadership. Making sure that everyone in the organization has a seat at the table. They know how their activities and actions feed up into the larger goal of the company on a quarterly and annual basis. So everyone in our organization has KPIs. You know what you're doing, you know how you're doing on it. We do a lot of one-on-ones. We also huddle every morning as an organization, which is, I think, from Rockefeller habits. So, if you need help, if ops needs help from sales or sales need help from admin or whatever it may be, you're never going to go more than one day without getting something resolved, because someone in the huddle is going to volunteer to help you, fix whatever your problem is. So that way we don't ever have, internal customers, ourselves, we're not waiting on something, and of course our customers aren't waiting on anything. So our leadership style is a bit varied. Mine is, I'm in learning mode all the time these days. And it has been difficult for me, I must confess, to learn to listen, because things change. They're not the way they were. We don't have to do things the way we did, and there's a lot of great ideas out there. So my style is, I think I'm trying to find the adjective, but there's a passivity there that's forced. It's forced passive, you might say.
Okay, excellent. Before I get to my next question, I want to introduce Rick Rector, who's joining me today. Rick is Executive VP here at United Publications, and just wanted to give him a taste of Leadership Talks program. So Rick, if you have any questions for Andrew, certainly chime in.
I will jump in for sure.
Excellent. Yep. So Andrew, let's go on here. Give me a little bit of history of IST. Can I call it IST?
Yeah. I wish I wish we were big enough that the whole world just knew us by that name. But
okay. Well, give me a little bit of history and tell me your work relationship that you have with Christine.
Sure. So we started in 1998, sort of on the heels of Windows 95 and back office, and our industry actually beginning to write software. System integration, was a up and coming piece of business in the electronic security industry. I worked in the Navy on, missile systems and weapon systems, shipboard, which are, the weapon systems are all integrated from the perspective of, you have an air search radar that picks up a target, you pass that off to the targeting radar that lines up your missiles and guns. And so system integration just made sense to me. And fortunately, Christine, like business, actually made sense to her because, while I was a fine integrator, I really didn't have a business background. So, we started the company. I think we got married the same day that we actually filed for the company papers, the C Corp filing. And yeah, and I think it was across the street. So I said, well, if we're gonna get in business together, we might as well get married. So she agreed. And the good thing that we did back then actually is we made her 51% owner, and I was 49, and that's parlayed as we've grown. Again, I kind of led for the first decade or so, I would say, from a sales and installation perspective. We're very small, right? So with a few people, you're kind of doing it all. And Christine definitely drove the back end and kept us in business and paid the taxes and all those payroll things like that. But eventually, her master's is in IT, and so this stuff all made sense to her as well. And so she ultimately proved to be better at structure, better at operations, better at organizing, and her vision for how to build the company slowly started to supplant my sort of just entrepreneurial enthusiasm. And as we grow, you ultimately have to sort of transfer away from sort of like a lifestyle company into a real business. And the last several years, that's been our focus, especially since we adopted Traction, and Christine wrote her 8A application. So we're a woman-owned 8A, and there's obviously a lot of DoD business out here. And so she drives it as president, and we, I'd say from the integration perspective, we definitely installed the first integrated solution that was ever done out here. It was on a Linnell backbone for a large military hospital. And, we had video integrated and IDS integrated and audio integrated, and no one had seen that here in the islands at all. And that model really became sort of the de facto standard now. That's really sort of most of the Navy's on that platform and the Army's on that platform. And then some of our larger commercial organizations also, got it in. I used to use that facility as like a demonstration, site to show people. They were very open to sharing what we had accomplished there. And that sort of, was the you might say the coattails that we rode into the integration market and its growth on top of that one large system. And it worked out really well for us. I think today we're, amongst the leaders in the state of Hawaii anyway, and we work throughout the Pacific on projects of this size, but we definitely do sort of like larger system integrations, kind of what we're known for today.
Talk about managed services and how you think it'll redefine how integrators work with clients.
Yeah, so
in the world.
Yeah, our my government base is really probably the last that's going to consume that way. Although I was sat in a DOD-CIO briefing Monday morning, and they are absolutely moving towards cloud, and moving towards industry, looking for the innovation that industry provides. So for us, I think my commercial space is moving easier into managed services. I do not yet have a fully integrated dashboard, but I'm looking to build that out. We run ConnectWise as our operating platform, and it's pretty much end-to-end from marketing to lead capture to once a lead is won, it becomes a project, and all of that lives inside of ConnectWise, all the way through the accounting piece. So ConnectWise has a lot of integration. They bought a company called LabTex years ago, and they're now integrated to Cisco Spark and Office 365. And one of our industry players, Genetec, is also integrated into ConnectWise. So I'm looking at the other players that we also use to be able to pull those activities and alerts out of the systems that we've deployed into ConnectWise, be able to respond to them from the desk, instead of having to roll a truck. Right. And I'm hoping that will make it easier for our customers, as well as I think cheaper for us and for the customers. There's just a win-win there. So we're today we just have some cloud-based service offerings that we use that are offered as a managed service, but we still do a lot of break fix. Christine has said by 2020 she wants everything that's not consumed by contract to be sort of as a managed service, level. So I've got a few years to figure that one out and build it out, and it's gonna be fun.
So have you done any analysis on the cost savings? Instead of rolling a truck, you're managing it from the desk. Have you looked at that at all? Have you worked up numbers?
Not specific to the ROI, but I can tell you that so I have a few accounts now that we actually have a VPN, an encrypted VPN into those accounts. And we do know that those accounts, we roll trucks about half as often as we do for the accounts that don't. So that savings is super substantial. I mean, we're talking about probably 15 minutes it gets used on that customer service call versus an hour half average on the truck roll. So right there is a 6-to-1 savings, basically.
That's significant.
Well, and that would give you an opportunity to service further around the Pacific Rim, too, besides just the islands.
Yeah, and like today we're on a plane. I've got folks in Guam now. I've got folks down in Kwajalein, which is another atoll way down in the Pacific. So again, the DoD is going to be the last guys to let us VPN into their systems, right? So that's going to be a little further out, but their push is to cloud. So if they can consume cloud, then they should be able to consume us at some point.
So here's a question. Now you're active with PSA, so I'm sure you've got your finger on the pulse of the integration community, right?
Try to.
Where are integrators today on adopting cloud, or as I've heard you say, everything as a service?
Slow. I mean, I shouldn't say that. There's some, so listen, we got to think about the history. There are some companies that we have in PSA that have done access control remotely via phone line since before networking, right?
Right.
So, you call into the panel, you download the new user, things like that. So, there's companies like that, and for sure, there are those companies that have central stations that kind of started as alarm monitoring companies, and they have their own central station, and they're doing a whole lot better at this than companies like us who were traditional, contract for hire, break fix type of companies, right? So but among the break fix companies, I gotta say the folks I talk to are still trying to figure this out. In their 10 or 15% of their business is done via cloud or via some sort of managed service or a monthly service or a subscription. But I did talk to just this year, in fact, a few guys that I really respect that are starting to really look at this, and they're some of them are at 39-45% of their business, of their revenue is coming from that managed service offering. So I think the majority are still in the low teens type percentage of their revenue. I think there is a good chunk, let's say 30%, that have much more than that. Maybe a third of their business is managed service. And then there's definitely a piece of that 10 or 15%, which is probably actually a lot of revenue that are derived 80 or 90% of their revenue from a managed service perspective.
So yeah, I mean, our industry is typically slow at adopting new technology. I mean, you look at IP and how long it took. I believe, at least my feeling is that the pace of technology has increased. And do you think the adoption rate will get faster for managed services, compared to like the way IP became really the number one?
Yeah, yeah, Tim. I think your question's right on. So we're never going to live in times where technology is moving as slow as it is today. It's only going to get faster tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So from that perspective, the reason I think MSP adoption will be faster is, for one, it's easier. So that jump from RS-485 and coaxial cabling into IP networking was a substantial leap for many. I was fortunate that that's how we started. We knew IP when we started, so we sort of were always there. But the tools, like ConnectWise and the APIs, the availability of tools to help someone offer access control or video or any type of security as a service are there today, and they're fairly easy to manage. They're fairly easy to implement. So the adoption shouldn't be difficult. Now, that being said, there's a lot of ownership that probably has to sort of move out of the way, retire to the board of directors, things like that, guys that barely caught IP after 20 years, and they're not going to understand this. They don't even consume this way. But the generation mine and below, folks in their 40s and younger all consume, by swiping and and tapping on their phone, right? So they're going to want to buy our services that way. They're not actually going to even understand it the way, you know, we did it 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's a big topic. Talk about data. You know, there's so much coming at us. How are you using it? And how are you taking advantage of data to help your clients?
Well, I posed this to our team when I got back. You know, the presentations we saw, I just went on about a 5-show tour there. Actually, we were down even in Florida for your show, right? And we heard a lot about what the manufacturers are doing. And so I challenged our sales team to get ready, because our manufacturer partners are definitely working with neural networking, both classified and unclassified, you know, deep learning technologies to deliver, you know, what were analytics, but these will actually be smarter type of applications into the products that we have. You know, video, it's kind of simple with video because you can look at all the things we always did with analytics that always had a fairly high false positive rate and weren't always satisfactory, especially in the outdoors. You know, those are going to get fixed. And so, you know, the challenge is now to go to our customers and how do we make their customers' lives better? How do we make the experience that our customers have with them either more appealing or more efficient or smoother or more secure, you know? And that's our challenge. And it's going to have to come from our customers. You know, if we don't interview them and engage them, we just have these widgets. The widgets aren't of any value if we don't know how our customers will consume them or use them or what it can do for them. So I'm looking forward to that. You know, you know, I think the bigger question for our industry is who's going to kind of own that data. You know, right now everybody's compiling, everybody's adding to the data sets, and they're growing and growing. And I think smaller guys, you know, people like myself, we're not ever going to own that capability. So we're going to have to leverage it. And I'm concerned that if it all ends up like if one person owns all the AI, for example, you know, a decade from now, what's it going to cost, right? And so it's an interesting time, and I'm glad that some of the larger manufacturers are in that space and playing, because otherwise it could become a total IT play, right? Whereas Google owns it all, or Amazon, and the security industry sort of left out.
So continue the next few minutes about talking about the vulnerabilities or just cyber as a whole. Big talk, you know, and it's an issue. You know, where does the responsibility lie? You know, is it the manufacturers? You know, who is it? And what's your take on that in terms of, you know, the person actually working with that end user and deploying systems? Well,
people, processes, products, right? We teach that all three. So internally, you know, you've got to clean up your house. We have guidance from the Fed here. 800-171 is our guidance internally, and that's based off of some of the NIST controls and things like that. So once a company builds the policies and puts in the tools and implements and automates and reports on those things, then you sort of got an understanding of what you've got internally, right? And then you know, once the technology's done, you still got to train your people. So there's a lot of policy work there and training that has to get done, and it has to go on all the time. It never ends, right? Once you've got that, I really think you're in a position to go out to your customer sites and start to talk about what we're deploying into their sites and how to harden those things. We worked quite a bit on, you might say, scanning and looking at all of this hardware that our industry has. You know, we don't really have a standard out there, and I'm a big fan of what UL's doing with the 2900 series. I'm working on that development committee with those guys, and you know, but I still think we're a half a decade or more away from having, you know, product that has that standard. But you know, DoD's crying out for it. Regulated industries are crying out for it, and they're not going to continue, I think, to put up with and consume the type of hardware that we've been installing. There are just too many unknowns with it that can be mitigated, and the manufacturers really need to step up there and help us with, at least with one line of product. I often hear from them they've got thousands of SKUs, and I say, look, just give me one line of product that we can use for regulated industry first, and that'll get us started.
Right. Okay. Interesting. We have actually we have no minutes left, but I guess, you know, tell me what you want to, you know, leave with our viewers and readers about IST and the integration world as a whole.
Well, the integration world for security integrators is going to have to become IT, right? There's an IT mandate. If you can't speak and act like an IT firm, I think you're going to be left with consumer grade type of work. And I believe that that's somewhat driven from cyber, somewhat driven from IT, but really going to be driven by the requirements of industry. They're going to need to protect their supply chain, and if your people and your products can't be vetted against a high standard of cyber hygiene, then I just don't think there's going to be a space for you left in our industry anyway. Not at the regulated level.
Excellent, thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate you getting up early and talking to us today. Is the sun up yet?
It's light out, so it looks nice. It's going to be a great day.
Great. But thanks for joining us. I appreciate your insights on the industry. Next week, we are talking with Sherrod Assessor of the Reed Expo folks. And that's it for now. Join us next week. And again, this is recorded, so you can go to the SSN Leadership Talks YouTube channel to take a look at this session. So, Andrew, thanks very much, folks. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Rick. Aloha.
Hey, guys.
Thanks, Andrew.